All right. So today we're talking about different ways that you can distribute assets from a trust. And I'm joined here with Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Amar.
How's it going?
Well, it's going well. How about you?
Good, good. So let's dig in here. How do we distribute assets from a trust? So let's maybe frame this in like the top three ways, right?
Okay.
So what would you say is the first?
So I spent a lot of time talking to clients about how they want either their children or whomever the beneficiary is going to be, how they're going to receive the assets. If they're already age 18, the first category is just an outright gift to those beneficiaries. Simple, easy, just distributes out to them as soon as the client who's creating the trust passes away.
Yeah, so that's for, I think for most people will be uh, when they're later in life and their children are adults now, right? That makes like keep things simple, right?
Correct. Yeah. At that point in time, they're already established financially. My clients have a good sense of how they're going to use and manage those funds. They've already hopefully built up their own kind of nest egg. And this is just going to be in addition to the assets they've already accumulated themselves. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. And then obviously this would be bad if you have young children, right? Like if you have
that would be a terrible decision if
you
they,
have a 21 or 22-year-old
yeah,
and getting assets outright,
right. Correct.
they'll have a red Corvette and next week it'll be toast.
That's exactly correct. Or if you have clients who have minor children, you
Yeah.
can't have an outright distribution because minors, if they're under age 18, they're technically considered incapacitated. So if you had a gift going to a minor, you'd have to set up a guardianship through the court. Here in California, and that's a bit of a mess. So you definitely want to avoid that if you have young children or financially young beneficiaries as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what would be the next way? I'm guessing it's like, at a certain age you get a little bit and then another age you get a little bit more and then there's some distribution later.
Correct. So you can do lump sum distribution. So you can do a single lump sum distribution. You pick an age 25, age 30, age 35. Those are the most common ones I see as just a single lump sum distribution. Again, by then they should be done with college, kind of on their way to either graduate school, done with graduate school, onto a career. The other option is in stages. So rather than just a single age, you do it using a variety of different ages. So the beneficiary can receive a third at age 25, half at age 30, remaining balance at age 35. I'll sometimes see clients who like the idea of a life event, so they can get it the earlier of completing an undergraduate degree or bachelor's degree or age 22. Or 2030. And so that will potentially incentivize the beneficiary to go get a college degree because they'll get their money a little bit sooner. So
Yeah,
sometimes it's life
access to
events.
funds.
Yeah, exactly. I have some clients too who like the idea of having it on certain anniversary dates. So at our death, you're going to get a certain amount at the 5-year anniversary and a certain amount at the 10-year anniversary. So, we can really kind of tailor this however the client wants, but it's really up to the client as far as at what age or life events or time periods they want the beneficiaries to receive it. But I'd say that's very common. I'd say just a simple outright distribution is becoming less and less common in my practice. And this really, like the stage distributions, are very common, particularly with clients of mine who have young children. So under age 18, or just uncertain about how the children are going to receive and use the funds.
Yeah, because I think if you have a legacy component, like the biggest concern is the sphere of influence around your children or your future beneficiaries. And you're looking at, well, if I distribute a little bit here and a little bit there, then they can be wise with those decisions that they make over those time periods. I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits, right?
Yeah, so that you can see, the child or beneficiary can get used to, yeah, managing a certain amount of funds without receiving or potentially blowing everything,
all at once.
in one exactly.
Yeah,
One fell
yeah.
swoop.
So I guess like maybe some of the downsides of that could potentially be because the trust would keep assets in there, it could potentially keep income in there,
Mhm.
and trust income is taxed at the highest rate at like 12,000 worth of interest, right? So potentially it may not be the most tax efficient, right, way.
Yeah, so we'll typically include provisions allowing the trustee to distribute out income just for that exact reason. So you're correct, Amar. Trusts are taxed from an income tax perspective at very compressed income tax brackets. So you're hitting the maximum rate if you trap the income inside the trust at, I think it's just over 12,000 of income. So
Mm.
we will typically include provisions in there. It could be 13,000 now, allowing the trustee to distribute the income out. So it's really principal that we're talking about as far as when, the assets, the principal is going to be distributed out. So, but we
Yeah.
want the trustee to have flexibility to do that if it makes sense from a tax perspective and the beneficiary is doing well. If the beneficiary is in a situation where even an income distribution out to them is a bad idea, we want the trustee to have flexibility to decide not to make that
Yeah. So it's
distribution.
really important to, when you're working with an attorney, to make sure you have that flexibility in language put into the trust. So that's a good point. Um, and then I guess what's the third then?
So the third option, which is becoming more and more popular these days, is kind of a blending of that prior example that we just talked about, which is stage distributions or a lump sum distribution at a certain age. Instead, you're going to keep it in a lifetime trust or a continuing trust for the beneficiary. But what you can think about is allowing the beneficiary to act as his or her own trustee at a certain age or ages. So that's why I say it's kind of a blending of the prior stage distribution provisions we talked about. The benefit to keeping it in a lifetime trust is it's really not the beneficiaries from a creditor perspective or from the IRS's perspective until the assets distributed out to the beneficiary. So by keeping it inside a trust structure, you're providing these beneficiaries with some insulation from creditors, insulation in the event of a bad divorce. These assets are not the beneficiary's assets until they're distributed out. They're technically the trustor or the settlor's assets that are in trust for the benefit of the beneficiary. This is insulation that the beneficiary can't give themselves. So it's a really powerful tool that you can provide to the beneficiaries, either the next generation or whomever you've listed as a beneficiary. But how you structure that, what distribution provisions you include in, who's the trustee are really critical because this trust is going to last the lifetime of the beneficiary. So, really fleshing out who's making decisions on the trustee side, when and how can the beneficiary receive assets, when can they be their own trustee becomes way more critical in this situation because it can potentially go on for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is, if you're an income beneficiary, don't try to rush to take all the money out of the trust because you're removing the protections of that trust. And I think that's an important factor is
Correct.
as you talk to multiple generations and having that open line of communication, it's probably good for your children to understand that their portfolio of wealth or whatever it may be can be their assets, this bucket over here, which is mom and dad's trust, and other pieces, right? So it's
Right.
really there to protect the children.
Yeah, and the good thing too is, for the most part, with these types of trusts, we try and protect them from estate tax at the next generation's level as well. So you talk about children or beneficiaries having their own assets that are a part of their estate. These will be outside of their estate for transfer tax purposes as well. So we talked a bit about income tax from a transfer tax perspective. At their death, we'll hopefully be able to protect as much as possible, maybe all of the assets that stay inside this trust to go to the next generation estate tax free.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So there's a lot of decisions to be made when you have setting up a trust and how do you, distribute assets. Hopefully this provides a little bit of a guidance or some framework in helping making those decisions. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the comments below. We like to keep this a conversation, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.